Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole and joined that way is my co-host Thomas Falco.
Hello!
It's good to have you back, and it's certainly good to have you back to discuss the topic we're about to discuss. We know that this isn't directly involved in the Championship, and we know we're a Championship Talk podcast, and our passion is for the Championship. However, this has deep-rooted effects and ripple effects throughout football. So, unless you've been hiding behind a rock, you will have heard of the announcement of the European Super League. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it, from the future King of England down to your mates in your WhatsApp group. Everyone who follows football has heard about the proposal, and what we want to do is kind of give our thoughts separately to our main podcast. So this is just going to cover this because I think this is going to take us a while. Certainly it's going to take me a while to finish ranting. Thomas, I'm going to give you your say in a bit. Is that okay? I know you haven't talked on a podcast for like nearly a month, but there's a format I want to follow. Okay, so we're going to start by caveating that I'm going to read out the proposal and what has been proposed officially. Then I'm going to give my thoughts on why this is happening. My thoughts, nothing based in any kind of fact, just my initial opinions and what I think is going to happen. And we're then going to touch on the kind of emotion from a football fan's point of view, which is, Thomas, where I want you to come in. And then we're going to look at what we think is actually going to happen moving forward. So, what is the proposal? The league, the European Super League, will have 20 teams, 12 founding members, plus 3 unnamed clubs that they expect to join. 5 sides will qualify annually according to domestic achievements. Under the proposal, the ESL campaign would start in August each year with midweek fixtures, and the clubs would split into two groups of 10, each playing each other home and away. The top 3 in each group would qualify for the quarterfinals, with the teams finishing 4th and 5th playing a 2-legged playoff for the 2 remaining spots. From then on, it would be the same 2-legged format as used in the Champions League, before a single-legged final in May at a neutral venue. The ESL said it would generate more money than the Champions League and will result in greater distribution of revenue throughout the game. This is the proposal that has been signed off by these 12 founding clubs. The 12 founding clubs are, and bear with me 2 seconds because I've just scrolled up way too fast. 6 teams in England: Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham and Manchester City. They are Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid from La Liga. And then they are, oh my God, I can't even find them. This is so annoying.
That's AC Milan, Inter Milan and Juventus, isn't it?
That is from Serie A. The reason that this has been announced the way it has is because UEFA have announced the proposed changes to the Champions League format. They announced this today. Obviously, the proposal for the European Super League was announced late on Sunday night, Sunday the 18th. I'm going to read you the proposal for the Champions League for the 2024-2025 season. And this is the format that the UEFA are looking at, and they consulted most of these clubs about. So the format details are taking the total number of teams in the Champions League from 32 to 36. The biggest change will see the transformation from a traditional group stage to a single league stage, including all participating teams. Every club will be guaranteed a minimum of 10 league stage games, 10 from 10 different opponents, 5 home games, 5 away games, rather than a previous 6 matches played against 3 teams home and away. Top 8 sides in the league will qualify automatically from the knockout stages, while the teams finishing 9th to 24th will play a 2-legged playoff to secure their path to the last 16. Similar changes will be applied to UEFA Europa League, 8 matches in the league stage, and the Europa Conference League, 6 matches in the league stage, subject to discussions and agreements. These 2 competitions may be expanded to a total of 36 teams in each league station. Now, the why. Under the current proposals, under the current Champions League proposal, the winner of last season's Champions League, which was, I can't even remember who it was, doesn't matter, got £34.7 million. Okay. Liverpool, for winning the Premier League, got 153 million. So that's over £200 million in revenue. The proposed revenue for this new European Super League is rumoured to be between 300 and 350 million. So the why is, that's the why. That is solely the why. Because there's more money to be made from the European Super League. The clubs that are signing up to this, most of them have massive debts. Most of them are sitting on massive amounts of debt, whether it be through stadium expansions, whether that be through years of non-competition in the Champions League, losing out on 54.7 million, whether that be through debt-laden buyouts, whether that be through a whole host of reasons. Most of these clubs have massive debts. The Premier League clubs have all 6 teams have in the last 20 years spent a proportion of their time playing less Champions League football than more Champions League football. So there are seasons where Premier League clubs miss out on the £54.7 million potential prize fund of winning the Champions League or even being in the Champions League. What that then in turn means is clubs' revenue fluctuates very wildly depending on performance. What this new format would allow, it would be guaranteed revenue streams from a guaranteed spot in this European Super League, which means guaranteed revenue for clubs. The reason foreign clubs such as Barcelona, Real Madrid want this is the Premier League prize fund for last season was 2.6 billion. The La Liga prize fund was 1.8 billion. So you haven't got to be a rocket scientist to work out that the foreign clubs are looking at the Premier League and looking at the vast sums of money in the Premier League and thinking the Premier League, it has a significant financial footing as opposed to our league. If we don't try and join them, we are potentially losing out on revenue. Owners of these clubs, and again it's been reported that obviously 3 of the English clubs are owned by Americans. Obviously you've got a Russian owner, you've got an overseas owner. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that these clubs are being bought as businesses. As such, it should be no surprise to anyone that these clubs are being run like businesses. They're being run for the sole purpose to make money. The last 3 seasons, and we're obviously in the second season of this, next season will as well, have seen significant drops in revenue due to COVID. Next season, there's no guarantee that even by Christmas we will have full gates with no social distancing, because that's very unlikely. So if you look forward, we've had this entire season with no fans. We had the end of last season with no fans, and we're looking at next season potentially with limited or no fans, depending on how COVID restrictions affect football. So how do you generate more revenue? You sell the product to more markets. It's a simple business strategy. You move and work in more markets that allow more eyes on your product and allows you to sell your product. How do these teams sell their product? They sell it through TV revenue. They sell it through rights deals. Obviously, we know the Premier League rights deal has already been agreed with Sky and BT. The overseas rights deal is also negotiated separately for the Premier League. Champions League rights deal again is controlled by UEFA. How do these clubs guarantee a new source of revenue, an increased source of revenue? Create a new league. It's as simple as that. You create a new league, you then can sell this product at an inflated price. How do they sell this league? They do what I suggested the Championship did 2 years ago, and that was come up with some sort of subscription-based service where you can pay per game. When you look at the potential fan base around the world, even if you paid $1, and I'm going to use the dollar as a good example, if you paid $1 per game, when you look at the global reach of some of these games, you would be talking $150 million per game potentially. And that's how these teams are looking at this. We're then going to look at why these clubs are doing this now, and that's because it's at a time of the season where UEFA are announcing their plans, and I'm going to say this now: UEFA's proposal for the Champions League is dog awful. If anything, as a competition, if the European Super League had no guaranteed entry for founder members, the Super League looks more interesting from a supporter's point of view than the stupid announcement from UEFA today. I'm saying that now because when you actually listen to what I said in terms of UEFA's format, the Super League has been criticised by having a very American type franchise. UEFA's format of playing 10 different teams is exactly how the NFL pick their fixtures. It's picked randomly. You play against your conference teams and then you play randomly every season against other teams from the NFC and the AFC. UEFA's format is more like the NFL than the European Super League. However, the one key difference is the European Super League does have guaranteed entry for these founding clubs, which is where the whole point of competition falls out the window. The next thing I want to talk about, and again, I'm kind of just going at this from a purely financial point of view, is as yet we've heard an awful lot from clubs that don't have a seat at this elite table. And of course, they're going to be very vocal. Of course, they're going to take a moral high ground because they don't have a seat at this table. We've heard very little from players, managers, and directors that do have a seat at this table. And the reason that is most of them have sought advice from their agents, potentially legal advice as to what they can and can't say, what they're contractually obliged to do. And most of them, a cynical point of view would be, don't want to hurt their future or current earnings. Because most of them will be contractually obliged not to speak out against their club and will be contractually obliged and being advised not to potentially say something that's going to mean they don't get a slice of the £300 million pie come August. That's a very cynical view, but the deafening words not coming out of Twitter accounts from Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford, Aubameyang, very influential players, and their Twitter accounts are deadly silent. To the point of their silence is saying an awful lot because they are being advised, probably rightly so, not to say anything that potentially could put them at contractual dispute with their current employers because most of them have got very big contracts, and contractually against potentially signing for one of the clubs that will be in this league come August. The hypocrisy of this whole situation is quite phenomenal. Everyone's squawking on Sky, everyone's squawking on BBC and BT about how this is unfair, this is hurting fans. The hypocrisy of big clubs and big prominent footballers such as Gary Neville, Alex Ferguson, when they cast aside the FA Cup to join the FIFA World Club Cup into early 2000s. Gary Neville played in that club, in that competition, and that hypocrisy really speaks words. And I'm not attacking them in any way. What I'm saying is this is an evolution of that step that was taken. We have talked on a number of occasions about UEFA creating a bigger Champions League. We've talked on a number of occasions about FIFA creating a bigger Club World Cup. This was absolutely going to happen. What the authorities don't like is they're not the one instigating it, they're not the one in control, and they're not the ones in power. The reason they're not the ones in power is because they're not the ones controlling the money. And that's where this is what this whole crux of this comes down to. It comes down to businesses increasing their revenue streams, businesses looking and thinking they might be hurt because their revenue or the product that they've invested in may become less valuable. Sky and BT have issued statements saying that they feel that this is against the potential community of football. I would argue that they're more worried about the big contract they've signed with the Premier League and the potential value that may not have when these clubs are playing 25 games in a Super League that are potentially more profitable to the clubs than playing the 38 games in the Premier League. I would also argue that perhaps the contract signed by BT, Sky and BBC, because BBC show Premier League games,
Amazon,
that potentially the
Amazon Prime as well. Don't forget
Amazon as well. Yeah, absolutely. Amazon Prime. That potentially the investment they've made and the eyes on that product become less valuable. When do you want to watch Manchester United play Burnley and watch Manchester United play out a weakened team because on Tuesday Manchester United are playing Real Madrid and then the following week Manchester United are playing Barcelona and then the following week is games between Burnley and Brighton sandwiched in between that as valuable to Manchester United when £150 million for winning 38 games, £300 million for winning 25. Let's be realistic with this. Where is that value going to lie? £100 million for being in the Premier League and win the Premier League, however much Manchester United got for being in the World Club Cup versus less than £1 million for winning potentially the FA Cup in 2000. It comes down to money and the hypocrisy. And again, I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying how I see the last sort of 18, 19 hours in the football world. Last thing, and then I'm going to move on to you because I know that I've just dominated 16 minutes of ranting. The Champions League lost its appeal when less eyes were on that product. So the Champions League lost its appeal in the UK when BT overpaid potentially for the rights to the Champions League. The Champions League is potentially it's certainly not as valuable to Premier League teams as Premier League status. I think that's evident. You get £55 million for winning the Champions League. You get over £100 million for finishing 20th in the Premier League. Money is where teams will put their focus. How many clubs can we honestly say, if they were offered a seat at this table, would say no? I've seen fans from other clubs. I've seen Swansea this week say football's nothing without fans. Barnsley did a fantastic Twitter post. Obviously, you're a Forest fan. How many of these teams wouldn't be standing in that obviously at that table? And that's the cold, honest fact. I've kind of exhausted what I think in terms of the finances of it. I've kind of exhausted why I think this is happening and why, unfortunately, I think this is going to happen. What were your thoughts, Thomas?
Thank you, Paul. You've covered everything that I wanted to say. Back to you. No, it is purely from an emotional point of view. We've been exchanging texts throughout the day, obviously when we were on breaks and not at work because we're professional. And I haven't read comments on social media from anyone who is in favour of this, and that is the supporters of the English clubs. I've not really read the Italian or the Spanish press. You've hit the nail.
You don't read it. You don't read Italian or Spanish.
How?
Anyway, sorry.
How dare you? I am multilingual in Norfolk dialect as well. But it is a hard one because I was reading it last night as it was coming through, breaking news, like 11:30 midnight, and it was as a fan who doesn't give a toss about European football anyway. I mean, considering Forest's history, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I don't care about the Champions League or the Europa League or the Europa Conference League. It's the sheer spoiltness, and I'm going to single out Tottenham and Arsenal for this. I think that's the thing that gets fans and gets people who have got an opinion on football, because you don't necessarily have to support any of these clubs to be upset, as I'm now going to prove. It's the fact that it's taken away from the likes of West Ham, who are having a bloody good season. How often have they been in the top four of the top flight of English football? I am not for 1 minute taking the mick out of West Ham. I'm just saying they're having a phenomenal season. They've got a rich history and won silverware, but people are not thinking about them and Leicester qualifying for the Champions League. Everything is deflected from a club like Arsenal, who have struggled to qualify for the Champions League for the last few years since Mr. Wenger, and even before he went they were starting to struggle. Tottenham, who when we were growing up were mid-table at best, the same as Arsenal as well, really, mid-table at best Premier League side. You look at the Italian sides as well. AC Milan, since their 90s heyday, they've always been there or thereabouts, but they've not done nothing, have they? And Juventus have won Serie A 8 or 9 years in a row. They may not even qualify for the Champions League by right this as a result of the Serie A season. Liverpool, who are the champions of England, may not qualify for the Champions League by right next season. It's just a sheer entitlement, but they can be so far off the pace, and because they're founder members of this new competition, but they're going to be there as well. You mentioned the models that will work. I understand your point from a business point of view, and yes, of course, if any club was offered this opportunity, they probably would go in it because of the money involved. Two things that come up, it reminds me, like, you've got the NFL and the NHL networks as well, where you can subscribe and watch the games en masse. Gary Neville made a very similar point to what you were saying on Monday Night Football, just in case you can see me looking at the screen. I'm just keeping an eye on the football as we're going along as well. He said that all it takes is for £1 basically to watch a Manchester United game in this sort of Super League, and that's £150 million. The problem is, if you're against this, what English fans can do who are based in England and would go is boycott the games. But the cold light of day, this competition, Paul, is not going to appeal to people in like fans who are based in Britain. It's going to appeal to other more emerging markets, like you sort of have a look at Asia and maybe North America as well. They're going to be getting hundreds of millions of pounds from that. I mean, you look at
and I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned, because I'm going to bring you on to the next, the next fact. La Liga has been dancing around playing a game in America.
Yes, they wanted to play
Barcelona last season. Were dancing around playing one of their La Liga games in America. The Premier League have been looking at that model for years, pretty much since 2010.
Yeah, that was the 39th game, weren't it?
Yep, they've been exploring that model. They've wanted to break America. When you look at how these teams are formed, and if you then move it into a franchise type model, why would you not move Arsenal to Miami?
Yeah, well, why would you not move Arsenal? That's exactly what happens in American football. Who was the latest team who done that? Was it the Rams?
They moved. Was
it the Rams? I'm not up on my American football, sorry, but there was one in the last couple of years, wasn't there? Or was it the Raiders?
Yeah, they've had to have the Raiders. They've had to have a whole new stadium built. They moved to LA.
Yes.
Yeah, they've moved to LA. They've had to have a whole new stadium, and then they had tornadoes and stuff, and it's been a shambles. But that's the thing. You can do that in American sports. You're not. In American sports, you have more affiliation to the team you supported when you're at college or university than you do the team where you live, because that team can up sticks and move. In the UK, we're different because of geography. You know, we have a lot of football clubs. You know, to pick a place that doesn't have a football club would be very difficult. However, if you're going to create a worldwide brand, would you have 3 clubs in London? No, you wouldn't. So why would you not just... And again, hypothetically, Chelsea have had all kinds of problems building a new stadium. Pretty certain they could build it for half the price and twice the size in America. Pick Chelsea up, move them. Yeah, and I'm not singling Chelsea out.
Of course, and we don't want that to happen as
no, absolutely
fans.
not.
We have a good friend who is a Chelsea fan, and I don't think he's in favour of this as much as the next fan.
When you look at these games are going to be played across time zones. These games will be played across the world. They'll be played in Asia. They'll be played Southern Hemisphere. They'll be played in South America. They will be played around the world. And they'll be played around the world for bigger audiences, bigger brand exposure, and that will earn more money. Simple as that. And these teams and these leagues have been trying to find a way to do this for years, absolutely years. And now they've got a mechanism where they can bring it in, have the control, and decide how to do this. And they will make this a financial success. I have no doubt whatsoever this will be a financial and commercial success. But these won't be 6 English teams. these will be 6 European Super League teams. And that's what really sticks with me. I was an Arsenal fan. Arsenal, for me, when we moved from Highbury to the Emirates, was the degradation of what Arsenal... I could see the ground walking to school. I could see Highbury walking to school. I had friends that were Tottenham fans. I had friends that were Arsenal fans. I grew up in the area. When Arsenal moved from Highbury to the Emirates, it was a slow erosion of what that football club was that I supported... that I supported when I was growing up. The club now, I have very little affiliation for. I've been to the Emirates. I've been to the Emirates a number of times. I went to Highbury just as many. In terms of match day atmospheres, preferred Highbury every day of the week. The seats are more comfortable at the Emirates, but that's beside the point. But for me, that erosion of what that football club stood for, when this big, concrete, no-name stadium with a no-name owner... It just isn't the football club that I supported. It isn't, I've got family that live in London, and it's not the football club they grew up with. When I look at things like Arsenal sacking the mascot, when I look at things like Arsenal sacking 50 staff and cost cutting in a way that, when you look at the revenue streams of this football club, is unacceptable. It's not how a classy business operates. And at the back of this, they've managed to sneak a seat. They're in 10th place. We drew with Fulham. Arsenal for the last 3 or 4 seasons have been absolute shambles. I don't pay for BT Sport. I haven't since Arsenal were last in the Champions League, because that doesn't excite me. Year after year, Arsenal in the Champions League. Year after year, we went out in the last 16 group stages, last 16. It was no fun. It was boring. There's a reason we watched the Championship, because in the 25 plus years the Premier League has been going, probably less than 25 years, but nearly 25 years, the Premier League has been going, it's provided some amazing moments. The Aguero goal being one. It's provided some amazing moments of drama. It's a very... but it hasn't even provided the amazing moments that one Championship season would produce. In the entire Premier League season, it has not provided the emotion of Nottingham Forest missing out on the playoffs by 1 goal last season.
Yeah, that was sheer excitement.
But it was excitement. Or Brentford falling over in the last 3 games of last season. It doesn't even pale in comparison in terms of excitement week to week. And this is why they have to bring this Super League out, because the Premier League is going to get stale very quickly. From a Forest fan's point of view, your team won 2 European Cups. You rubbed that history in my face the entire time I've known you, and you support a club that's steeped in this history. If your team was one of these clubs, one of these 6, how would you feel?
I'd be totally ashamed, and I think that is I say that's the universal. Again, I've not read the press from abroad, but I haven't read comments from any domestic fan who's happy about this, or is enthused about it, or looking forward to it, or thinks it's a good idea. I'd be the same as well, because it's just... I don't know how to put it into words, really. I just think it goes for me. And again, I understand your point, and that's ultimately what that's all about. That's about the bottom line and money and business. There's no fun in having a competition. I haven't got that same affinity. I do watch American football because my uncle's a massive fan of American sports, and he got me into it. But I don't have the same affinity, because there's nothing at stake. You qualify for the Stanley Cup, or to go to the road to the Super Bowl and the playoffs and things like that, and the sort of divisional conferences. There's no promotion or relegation. There's no hope for minor teams to push their way up. I was trying to explain this to my wife, because she's not the biggest football fan. She puts up with it because it's big part of my life. I was trying to equate it, and I was saying, because they were talking on TV, Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher were talking about Manchester United against Burnley. Again, no offence to Burnley, but that's the example they used. Fielding a weakened team on the Saturday because they're playing Real Madrid on the Tuesday. Their version of a weakened team, if they're getting this £300 million pie that you're speaking of, they can buy players from, say, Norwich, because that happens quite a lot with Norwich, unfortunately. They could cherry pick the best players from the other clubs who are not going to be involved in this European sort of Super League, and their second choice squad would be like still immense because of that sheer volume of financial support they have to keep that squad going. So a club like Norwich or Burnley or a Forest or Brighton or anyone like that who has not got the opportunity to qualify for this competition or be in this competition are going to have loads of money, but are not going to. But they're going to be forever. They can't push above that. They can't push above that level, if you know what I mean, Paul. They can't, because the clubs are going to be taken there, and it happens now. But Norwich have been in the position where, like, right, we've made enough. We can sort of hold on to our players and go up. If a Manchester United, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea, Manchester City, etc., want to bid £100 million for Max Aarons for it, they are gonna sell, and they can strengthen their squad, but Manchester United and that are going to be in a stronger position because they're going to be hoarding, like again, no offence to Chelsea fans, but Chelsea have got like 10 squads worth of young players on their books who will never break through to the top level because Chelsea have got them and loaning them out to other leagues. And
I think you made a really good point. You made a really good point about West Ham having an amazing season. There's a player that couldn't even get in the Man United squad that's on loan to West Ham.
Yeah, of course, Jesse Lingard.
Brentford's best, or arguably one of the best players in the Championship last season, is sitting on West Ham's bench.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at examples like that. Brentford in the last 3-4 seasons have had their best players ripped away from them for good sums of money, and you can argue that's a good business model from Brentford. If you look at the squad Brentford would have, they could easily compete in the Premier League if they'd have kept those players.
Yeah,
Ollie Watkins, Mopé, Benrahma, to name just a few. And I think that the fact is, of all the furore, these are businessmen that own these clubs. So they're looking at this as a business decision. If they were managing staff, they would be talking around things and a load of old bollocks like change curve. You go through the anger, then you go through denial and all that corporate bullshit, because they're running this like a business. They are treating this like a business. There was a statement that Sky have put out from one of the board members, unnamed, that said that this backlash was absolutely expected. This isn't going to change because the sums of money involved are too vast. These owners of these clubs, Florentino Perez, the chairman of this European Super League, he does not care if people are abusing him on Twitter. He isn't going to care if Real Madrid are protesting out. Well, they can't protest outside the ground. The ground's been rebuilt. But he ain't going to care about that because the sums of money involved are potentially pay for that new stadium and clear Barcelona's debt, or, for Juventus' case, pay Cristiano Ronaldo's wages that they overpaid for. These clubs do not care, and these owners do not care about the fan backlash. They're banking on some fans forgetting and still coming to games. They're banking on some fans still buying shirts, but they're banking on a bigger revenue stream from the 330 million people that live in the United States, or the market in South America, or the market for Premier League and European football in Asia.
Yeah, well, you think of the potential markets in China and India alone.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Think of the money that the Chinese Super League was paying to get European footballers up until the Chinese government put in restrictions on how much they could pay. You look at the sums of money that were being paid to players like Hulk, Oscar, to go and play in the Chinese Super League. We are talking, these players were paid and became the most expensive footballers in terms of wages on earth. Mm-hmm. You think of that kind of appeal and the kind of eyes on a product. They do not care whether 70 million people in England are up in arms. They don't care. 70 million people. That's effectively the population of California.
I just think
one state in America. And you look at that and you think, if you're a football fan and you're thinking, how do I stop this? The reality is the only people that can stop this are the players playing for those 12 league clubs.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only way this stops. And this is I'm not ending on a sour note, but the only way that this stops is if the players that are currently playing for Manchester United, Arsenal, Manchester City, these millionaires, look at their current contracts and are willing to sacrifice whatever's left on that current contract and come out and say, I am not playing in this league. There could be some argue around change of employment, not being the contract they initially signed up for. You could probably have some 10-year legal battle on that. But if they look at this and go, I'm not playing in your league, the threat of not playing international football and the threat of not playing in the National League, effectively what you're saying is these clubs will have a budget of £300 million for being this European Super League. So they would more than be able to cover the salaries, because as we've just pointed out, win the Champions League, win the Premier League, that's £200 million. They're going to get more. They'll be able to cover their expenditure. Effectively, these players could be paid the same money and play 25 games.
I just think from talking to, I'll be very brief in my sort of summing up because I know you've had like 95% of the words in this, Paul. I am smiling. Obviously, you can't see me at the minute, but I am smiling. The points that I've talked about with people today, because I've talked to quite a few people about this today, is as well. I've already mentioned the closed nature. For me, it is the sheer hilarity that UEFA and FIFA are crying foul and saying it's all about greed. I'll sort of let you fill out that gap there, because UEFA and FIFA are highly ethical and always have been, of course.
I'm going to add something to that in a second, but please carry
on. Of course, I would like to add the caveat allegedly, just in case they wish to sue. As well, we're looking at I think there are court cases out there that could back me up on that one. It's just the sheer nature of it as well. The owners and the chairman and the chief executives were taking part in discussions with UEFA about the reformation of the Champions League up until Friday and Saturday, knowing that this was going to come out on the Sunday. So that's like, really? That's like, I can see why, but
I'm going to leave this with one sad thought. And you talked about ethics, and we're going to leave this here. UEFA, FIFA, all of the governing bodies, all of the, it's united football against this European Super League. Where were they the last time there was football fans chanting racist abuse at players? And this is the sad truth, that these bodies are only acting when money's involved and their product could be harmed. And that says more about where this is and where everyone involved currently sits and the moral high ground. This says more about where football is right now and where its priorities are. Because when you look at the alleged, you look at racial abuse constantly. The last 3 or 4 podcasts, I've mentioned it. Players getting racially abused on social media. Players, we've mentioned it in the time we've done this podcast. Players being racially abused by fans in stadium. And you look at the furore that this has caused and the statements and how quick they are to act and how quick they are to talk about banning this club or that club. I think that speaks volumes for them all. Hope you've all enjoyed this podcast. It was a difficult one to put together, and we certainly, given the length of time, needed it to go separately to our main pod. We are looking to record on Thursday, so we'll catch the midweek games. We haven't forgotten about the games at the weekend and the massive implications for promotion and relegation to our league. We just needed to cover this separately, and hopefully our emotions that come across. Obviously, we tried to segregate fact to what our opinions are. So from a legal point of view, we're sorry. We have opinions. That's what we think. Don't take it as gospel in terms of what we think is going to happen. Hopefully, we've given this in as cold fact as possible, but adding that emotion as Arsenal fan, Forest fan, Championship football fans. And hopefully we've kind of come across, hopefully we've balanced and hopefully we've referenced everyone who had made comments and reported on this other than ourselves, because we're just trying to digest what's been going on. We will be talking about this again, no doubt. I have no doubts that this is going to be something that we talk about. We are going to try and segregate this topic from our main podcast, though. Cool. That's goodbye from me.
That's goodbye from me.
And we'll speak to you all on Thursday. Bye.
Bye.